What is going on, everyone? It's your guy, Cole Jackson, back here on Road Graders, and today we are going to be diving into the Mark Andrews extension. If you guys are looking forward to this, if you're excited about the news, do me a favor, hit that like button and subscribe if you're new here. Before we dive into it, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsors. This video is brought to you by our friends at Underdog. They just dropped prediction markets, spreads, totals, team outcomes, and the best part, you can combine them with player picks for bigger multipliers. Sign up today using code ROAD. Make a $5 fantasy entry and you will get $100 in fantasy bonus entries. Prediction markets are now live in 25 states, including Texas, California, and Florida, and Underdog is available in over 40 states with player picks and draft games. Prediction markets, player picks, all on Underdog. So we have a lot to talk about here. I'm going to try and keep this video as condensed as possible, but a lot to dive into. I want to give you guys my honest thoughts about the reaction, my reaction to the Mark Andrews signing, and I'll kind of start at a high level. I'm very surprised by this news. We've heard this in the national media, so I don't think it's necessarily a surprise. But the Ravens were working on an extension with Isaiah Likely this offseason. Now, what reportedly happened there was the Ravens came in at a number. Isaiah Likely was seeking a couple million more AAV over what the Ravens were offering. So they were too far apart. Contract negotiations kind of fall apart. Isaiah Likely gets hurt. We'll come back to that a little bit later. But that's obviously a major impact. But I do find it very interesting that they were looking at an extension with Isaiah Likely. And again, this isn't groundbreaking news. We know this. And then they land on an extension with Mark in season, especially amid all of the struggles. So, what are kind of my thoughts on this? First off, again, I'm surprised and I'm having a hard time kind of wrapping my head around it, mostly because it seems like we're signing a guy that is declining, and that's not necessarily like, if you look at the numbers, obviously Mark Andrews' biggest year came in 2021 when he had 107 catches, 1,361 yards and 9 touchdowns. Those are big numbers. And what you can really see when you dive into some of the background numbers, you can see his yards per route run in the far right column drop dramatically in 2025. Going from and 2021 wasn't covered in summer sports where I got this from, so you don't see his yard per route run was super high in his 2021 year. So I'm not trying to discount or hide that by any means. Super high because of the production that he put out there. But you can see how it's, kind of fluctuated and then dropped dramatically in 2025. Now, obviously, we can't hide the fact that the entire pass offense doesn't look as good. Lamar Jackson doesn't look the same. He has been hurt. The offensive line is dookie. We know all those pieces. So I do think it's interesting, though, just to kind of see the decline and then buy on the decline. And that's really what kind of surprised me the most, because this isn't tough chump change that they're giving out. This was pretty significant money. This is top 5 among tight ends in AAV, coming in at $13 million a year. It's right around, or I think it was $14 million a year. It's right under TJ Hawkinson. Guys that are exceeding him right now are obviously George Kittle, Trey McBride, kind of the top 2 dogs. But then you look at kind of the comparables, right? He got more than Jake Ferguson, who did just get his contract this offseason. He came in at 12.5. So that's a good kind of comparison where Jake Ferguson's kind of entering that prime, and Mark Andrews' prime is significantly better than Jake Ferguson's. Make no mistake about that. But when you look at the comparable right now, because we're comparing a 26-year-old Jake Ferguson to a 30-year-old Mark Andrews, a lot more similar footing, yet he's getting $2.5 million more AAV, or sorry, $1.5 million more AAV. So I would have expected him kind of more in that area. But then you do look at some guys like Jonnu Smith got $12 million, Evan Ingram got $11.5 million, Juwan Johnson $10.25 million, and I do think he's exceeding those guys. So the contract situation for tight ends is just very interesting to take a look at. And trying to kind of map out where those should be. So overall contract evaluation, I do think a little higher than I was expecting. It does sound like this deal was kind of put in with the third year being an easy out. So it's kind of more of a 2-year. I don't think the official details have come out, but I saw Brian McFarland, who's obviously our go-to for contract situations. And we've seen that in a lot of 3-year deals where the third year can be kind of got out by the team. So if it's a 2-year kind of $20 million deal, then it's a little bit more reasonable. So overall contract valuation, a little higher than I'd expect it to be or I'd like it to be, but not anything crazy. It really comes down into the context of what the Ravens are trying to build. The Ravens need to address their offensive line this offseason. I do think that's going to be a better route in the draft than in free agency. So, not too much of an issue there. And really the kind of issue with this team this offseason is going to be around Lamar Jackson's contract. They need to get an extension done with him. They can't go into next season, or I mean, they shouldn't go into next season with a $53 million cap hit or whatever it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be extremely high. So they need to get that figured out. So the question becomes, was Lamar Jackson providing, his input on this contract extension, and will this have an impact on extending Lamar? That's a big piece in my opinion, because we saw this last time where Lamar kind of demanded we sign Odell Beckham Jr. They do it, and then he gets an extension. So, I mean, there's a bit of yin and yang there, but I am a little worried about, kind of extending him. So now we get into the comparison of him against Isaiah Likely, because, Likely stepped up in that injury season he had in 2023. Isaiah Likely kind of gets that big debut in a tight end one spot where we'd only seen him as a complimentary piece. And I think we can all agree he stepped up. He got 5 touchdowns that year, 30 catches, 411 yards. Now his numbers are down this year too. His advanced analytics around EPA and yards per route run are a little bit better than Mark's, but not by a whole lot. Again, it kind of speaks to how anemic the passing offense is right now. So when you look at Isaiah Likely, it becomes what's a better fit for the offense. They're not the same player. Mark Andrews is more of that traditional kind of post-up tight end. Isaiah Likely is more of a move tight end. So they're not the same player. They complement each other really well, and that's kind of the key piece here. And we know that the tight end position is extremely important in Lamar's offense. Lamar loves to throw to tight ends. Mark Andrews is, I think, number 1 amongst tight ends in the last 2 years in touchdowns. And that's a huge reason why. Lamar has a lot of trust in him. We'll get to the postseason here in a minute. For those probably dropping a comment down below to let me know about that. We will talk about that soon. Don't you worry. So it really comes down to what do you prefer? Isaiah Likely entering his prime, 25, 26 years old, versus Mark Andrews exiting his prime. And do you think Isaiah Likely can live up to Mark Andrews? And it's not necessarily that he needs to be at the level of Mark Andrews in his prime, because I don't know if he's going to go out there and get 1,300 yards and 12 touchdowns or whatever it was that Mark scored in 2021. So really comes down to who are they? Who's more important for the offense? I think both are important. I do think a combination of Likely and Kolar makes a lot of sense, keeping your young guys. But then it comes down to, what did Isaiah Likely want for a contract extension? Because if he was looking for top 3, top 4, top 5 money, which apparently he was, I don't know if you can justify that, especially coming off his foot injury that was said to it would linger for about a year. And that's maybe why we're seeing a down year in production. Then we get into the postseason piece. And this isn't a piece that you can just ignore. It is a big piece of this. Mark Andrews, incredible player, incredible Raven. He's the Triple Crown holder, career leader in receptions, yards, touchdowns, pretty much everything you'd want. But then you go to his postseason success. In 8 postseason games, he has 0 touchdowns. He has 315 yards. Everything's down. His success rate's 41.5, which is down from all of his regular season numbers. His catch percentage is down, and the big thing is his drop percentage is 19.5%. I did the comparison. I had a tweet back way when the postseason happened. Let me actually throw it up on the screen. I clipped it. I forgot I clipped it. So there we go, right there. So Mark Andrews has 33 career drops on 673 targets in the regular season. And playoffs. The split is 26 drops on 621 targets. That's a 5.6% drop rate. If you're wondering why the numbers don't equal, it's because not all targets are catchable targets. In the playoffs, he has 7 drops on not just 52 targets. That works out to 19.4 for a drop percentage. So it's quadrupled in the playoffs. That's how much more he drops the football. And obviously we have the fumble last year and all the gaffes. So Mark Andrews is a huge contributor to the issues that the Baltimore Ravens have in the playoffs. So I think you have to take that into consideration. Now, you have to be very consistent with how you apply that, because I've said it all the time. It's not just Mark Andrews that, his play drops in the play. The whole team does. The defense doesn't get takeaways. Lamar Jackson doesn't look the same. The pass protection isn't the same. The whole team pisses down their leg in January. Mark Andrews is part of that, but he's not the only part of that. So that's kind of the nuance there. But he is definitely part of that issue. Isaiah Likely, on the other hand, has kind of stepped up and been a playmaker in the playoffs. Obviously, not anything too crazy because the Ravens haven't made a whole lot of big plays in the postseason, but he's been more of a factor than Mark Andrews. So I think you have to consider that as well. So again, but the overall contract valuation perspective, it really comes down to, were you willing to pay Isaiah Likely that kind of money that Mark got, basically? Because that sounds like is what he wants. So where I'll wrap this up and give you guys my final conclusion is, I think the better route would have been trying to get Isaiah Likely on something like a 1-year deal, because the reality is he was clearly seeking big dog money, and he broke his foot, and he's not going to be healthy for a full year. So he might be okay going into next season on a 1-year deal that gives him, a good amount of cash, but lets him hit the market again soon, rather than kind of settling. Now, what he would get on the open market is the real interesting part, because again, he doesn't have any crazy flashy numbers, but I think you put on the tape, you look at the advanced metrics, I think you like a lot of what you see with Isaiah Likely. So it really comes down to, would he have taken that? Maybe he wouldn't have taken it at all, and this is a dumb suggestion. I really don't know. Drop a comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. But that's really what I would have been targeting in this situation, was trying to get him kind of back on that 1-year deal, even trying to get Kolar back on the cheap and kind of deploy the two of them rather than rolling with Mark at that bigger deal, just because, even if it's only 2 years, you're looking at his 31st and 32nd year season. Tight ends do age pretty well, but I mean, is it going to get better in the playoffs? He's going to continue to be a factor in the regular season, no doubt about it, but he hasn't done anything to show us that he's going to show up in January. And I think that's an issue for this whole team, but it also has to be an issue for who you're keeping around. So all that to say, I do want that nuance in there. I am worried about judging his stats this year too much because of the entire offense being in a down year. And, dealing with a quarterback that's obviously injured and kind of has been since the start of the season when he had his foot stepped on. So it'll be interesting to see where you guys land on that. I can't wait to read the comments. I'll be down there going back and forward with you guys all day. Drop your honest comments. Let's have an honest conversation about this. Drop the truth. Let's have some fun today. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. Hit subscribe if you're new here. And thank you to our friends at Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring this.